Hey, did you ever think sometimes that Jesus doesn't make any sense? Right? Right? I mean, we read things like the first shall be last and the last shall be first. Give up your life and you'll gain your life. And you're like, this is like upside down. I mean, this is so different than what we're taught from the world. The world says, go for the gusto, be number one, do it all. And sometimes Jesus, well, he tells us to do things and we go like, I that doesn't make sense, right? Sometimes, you're walking down the road and this voice comes in your head and says, hey, call Steve. And you're like, Steve? I haven't thought about Steve in months. Or you're walking down the road and a song comes on, you're like, man, I ought to go see my mom. And you're like, why would that song make me think about going to see my mom? Or some other thing, right, comes in, and all of a sudden we're prompted. We feel like we should do something. Go see somebody, call somebody, be involved in something. And we're like, that doesn't make any sense. Jesus is talking on the shore of the lake one day, and the people start crowding around him, and he's getting pushed into the water. So Simon Peter is sitting there in his boat. He says, hey, man, let me get in your boat. And he says, okay, jump in. And Jesus jumps in and he starts preaching. And when he's done, the people go away and he says, hey, Peter, do me a favor, man. Why don't you go out into the deep water and throw your nets into the lake? And Peter's like, we just washed the nets and we fished all night and we didn't catch anything. And it's morning and the fish don't come out in the morning. They come out at night. That's when we go fishing. And that doesn't make any sense at all, Jesus. But because you asked me to do it, okay, we'll do it. And he calls Andrew and he's like, come on, help me get the boat out. We're going to go out and throw the nets in. And Andrew's like, what? We just fished all night. That's ridiculous. And Peter's like, Jesus just said, do it. Let's go. So they row out, right? And they throw the net in, and so many fish are in the net, it starts to sink the boat. And they yell in, like James and John, their fishing partners, are in their boat. And they're like, come on, man, get out here. And they take their boat out, and both boats are so filled with fish that they're getting ready to sink. Incredibly large catch of fish. And Peter comes back in, he falls on his face. He's like, Jesus, you are the Son of God. I mean, you are like so awesome. I can't believe it. And Jesus says this, hey, all you fishermen, put away your nets, follow me, and I'll make you fisher of men. And those four fishermen looked at each other and were like, what is he even talking about right now? But because you called us, Jesus, we're going to leave our job, we're going to leave our families, and we're going to follow you. Now, that might not have made sense to many people, right? But it made sense to those guys that day. And they became 4 of the 12 disciples. What's Jesus calling us to do? That doesn't make any sense right now. May we hear the call and follow. May God continue to pour out his grace, mercy, and blessings in each and every one of us until we get to meet again. Amen. Amen.